This is a review for the lesson on Edgenuity titled Triangle Congruence, Side, 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 and Hypotenuse Leg. So in this lesson, they just give you two more shortcuts, if you will, to prove that triangles are congruent. You don't have to prove that all three angles are the same and all three sides are the same for you to be able to say the triangle is actually the same. If you can just show that three sides of one triangle are the same to three sides of another triangle, then automatically everything is the same. Similarly, for hypotenuse leg, the only stipulation with this one is it has to be a right triangle. This only works for right triangles, not anything else. And so on this one, you'd have to explain how you know the triangle is right, and then the hypotenuse have to be the same length, and just one of the other legs has to be the same length. So I thought it'd be best to kind of give you a little proof here to help you in case that comes up in the assignment or the quizzes. So on this one, we're given that M is the midpoint of segment AC, that segment BA is congruent to segment DC, and that segment BM is congruent to segment DM. Okay, so we already have two sides. We only have to get one more side and we'll be done here. So let's go ahead and go. Okay, so remember with our statements, we're always going to start with what's given. The order doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and put these two congruent statements first because they're just basically answers. They gave us the congruent parts. We don't have to pull anything from them. So I'll say BA is congruent to DC and BM is congruent to DM. Given and given. Okay, next given. M is the midpoint of AC. Okay, so this given, it's not a congruent statement. It's not helping us prove that, well, it is helping us, but it's not just flat out saying this is congruent to this. So we need to look at this information and see if we can pull a congruent statement from it. So it's saying that M is the midpoint of AC. Well, what does a midpoint do? A midpoint is going to cut this perfectly in half. So if this whole thing was 10, it would be divided into 5 and 5, which would make them the same. So from this here, I'm going to say that I can conclude from this that AM is going to be congruent to, remember order matters, so AM congruent to CM, because that's the definition of a midpoint. That's what it means to be a midpoint. It's going to cut it perfectly in half. Okay, so now I have three things. I have the three sides, and I can be done. I can now say that triangle ABM is congruent to triangle CDM by side, side, side. Okay, so I wanted to show you one also for the hypotenuse leg. So again, when you're doing hypotenuse leg, there's three things you've got to get. You've got to say how you know it's a right triangle, and then you've got to say the hypotenuse is the same on both triangles, and just one other leg. Those are the three things you have to do for HL. So we are given that AE is perpendicular to DC. It would help if I had letters in there, wouldn't it? So this is A, D. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so segment AE is perpendicular to segment DC, and segment AD is congruent to segment AC. So look at that. If we can show that these are two right triangles here, we already have the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is always opposite where your right angle is going to be. So again, statements. And reasons. I'm going to start with the easy given, the one that just gave us a congruent statement with no work needed. AD is congruent to AC. Okay, so now let's talk about that segment AE is perpendicular. Okay, so that wasn't a congruence statement or anything, but we still need to show that the triangles are right and prove that one other leg is congruent, because like I said, we already have this hypotenuse there. So if I know that AE is perpendicular to DC, how does that help my proof? Well, if we're perpendicular, that means that these are both right angles. So now that is giving us the part that we can show that these are two right triangles. So I can say that angle AED, that's this one right here, and angle AEC are right angles. And the reason I can say that is because that is the definition of perpendicular. That's what it means to be perpendicular. It makes two right angles there. Okay, so we have the hypotenuse, we have that they're right triangles, now we need one other leg. There's no other given that we can use, so remember when you run out of given, you just need to look at the picture and see if there's anything you can conclude just on the way the picture is drawn out. And one of the things, I believe it was the last video or the one before, one thing I told you to look for, always look for overlapping sides. If AE is on both triangles, if AE is 5, it's going to be 5 on the left triangle and 5 for the right triangle. So I can say that AE is the same as itself, AE, and that is always the reflexive property. So like looking in the mirror, something the same as itself, reflexive, reflection. Okay, now I have my three things. I said that they're right angles, I have that the hypotenuse is congruent, and one other leg. So I can say that triangle ADE is congruent to triangle ACE by HL.